Vishnu Paraparamam Saparivratapraja Astutra Sutishvishnu Kesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Jai Namacharya Das Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Sari Gaur Bhaktarinda Ki Jai Swami Bhaktarinda Ki Jai Lord Premananda all the rest assembled devotees, all the rest assembled devotees, all the rest to Shri Guru and Shri Garanga, all the rest to Shri Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo 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 Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
This is from Srimad Bhagavatam 7th Canto Chapter 2 Text 45. Nashrutam Jnanuvaktāyam Mukyopi Atra Mahan Asuhu Yas Tvendriyavan Atma Sa Chanyaha Pranadehayoho Nashrutananuvaktāyam Mukyopi Atra Mahanasu Yas Vihendriyavan Atma Sachanyaha Pranadehayoho Nashrutananuvaktāyam Mukyopi Atra Mahanasu Yas Dvihendriyavan Atma Sachanyaha Pranadehayoho
Nashrotananuvaktāyam Mukyopi Atra Mahanasu Yas Dvihendriyavan Atma Chanya Pranadehayo Nashrotananuvaktāyam
Mukyopi Atra Mahanasu Yastvendriyavan Atma Sachanaya Pranadehayo
Not Shrota, the listener. Not Anuvakta, the speaker. I am this. Mukyaha, chief. Api, although. Atra, in this body. Mahan, the great. Asuhu, life air. Yaha, he who. To, but. Iha, in this body. Indriyavan, possessing all the sense organs. Atma, the soul. Saha, he. Cha, and. Anyaha, different. Pranadehayoho, from the life air. And the material body. Translation. In the body, the most important substance is the life air, But that also is neither the listener nor the speaker. Beyond even the life air, the soul also can do nothing. For the soul is actually the super soul is actually directed in cooperation with the individual soul. The super soul conducting the activities of the body is different from the body and the living force. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead distinctly says in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarasvacham Hridi Sanivishto Matasmitri Jnanam Apohanam Cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Although the Atma, or the soul, is present in every material body, he is not actually the chief person acting through the senses, mind, and so on. The soul can merely act in cooperation with the super soul because it is the super soul who gives him direction to act or not to act. Mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha. One cannot act without his sanction, for the super soul is upadrashta and anumanta, the witness and the sanctioner. One who studies carefully under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master can understand the real knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually the conductor of all activities of the individual soul and the controller of their results as well. Also, the individual soul possesses the indriyas or senses. He is not actually the proprietor, for the proprietor is the super soul. Consequently, the super soul is called Rishikesha, and the individual soul is advised by the direction of the super soul to surrender to him and thus be happy. Sarvadharmam paridyaja mamekam sharanam braja. Thus he can become immortal and be transferred to the spiritual kingdom, where he will achieve the highest success of an eternal, blissful life of knowledge. In conclusion, the individual soul is different from the body, senses, living force, and the airs within the body, and above him is the super soul who gives the individual soul all facilities. The individual soul who renders everything to the super soul lives very happily within the body. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinanam Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharana Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vashkoti Vizatara. In the body, the most important substance is the life air, but that also is neither the listener nor the speaker. Beyond even the life air, the soul also can do nothing, for the super soul is actually the director in cooperation with the individual soul. The super soul conducting the activities of the body is different from the body and the living force. So as in many other places, especially in the Bhagavad Gita, the presence of the super soul is precisely described. It is something which is denied by anybody, even often material class of people called religionists. They have problems with that because to clearly understand that God is present in our heart is very intimidating for those who actually act sinfully, because there's actually an amazing thing. I think it was Hiranyaksha or Hiranyakashipu, they ordered to kill Vishnu, and they said we should prosecute God so badly that he has no other shelter as people's hearts, because there they couldn't reach and find him and kill him. So they said he will hide. They consider that God is so afraid of their demonic power that he has no other refuge as people's hearts, and there he can hide hidden. It's a very strange view upon the super soul. God hid himself because he was so afraid, so he concealed himself to human hearts. So it's actually exactly opposite. He is very clearly stated that it's Krishna in the heart who is actually facilitating anything else. If there is no super soul, the soul cannot exist. Even externally, it looks like the soul is powering the body. The ultimate Anumanta and Upadrashta, the sanctioner and the observer, is Krishna in the heart. To understand that, so many problems would be removed from our lives, really. Therefore, Like in Satya Yuga, where that was the primary object of meditation, that was a spiritual process to sit down and meditate about the super soul. There was no management, no need of any management, because everybody was managed by the super soul. Because Krishna doesn't, it's one of these things that Maya does to us. We see things separately from Krishna. We think, oh yeah, Krishna is here like on the altar, but he is not in a courtyard. He's not in the house there. God is in the church, but he's not outside of the church. So we have to go to the church to see God, but as when we exit the church, we don't see God. He's not there. So outside we can do any damn thing we want, but not in the church, not as good, because he can see that. It's like God cannot look around the corner. That's actually the idea. If I hide behind the corner, then I can do any damn thing. Or when I switch off the light, it's very good. Then he cannot see. Nobody can see anything. I switch off the light and I can do any damn thing I want. And when I want to be religious, I switch the light on and I will go, praying and bowing down and I will worship. Very much actually the idea in the materialistic religions. But the awareness of super soul being present in everybody's heart immediately eliminates this kind of very limited understanding of God. Because he's not subjected to switch off the light or, nothing. He's with us all the time. It's like the body is like the car, so you have constantly a co-driver sitting next to you. Constantly. If people would know that, then so many problems would be removed. All this social and moral and, and emotional blah, 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 blah would be immediately eliminated. Because the super soul is here. He's watching. He is watching and he is giving permission. So we should actually, if everybody works in that kind of consciousness, then no problem. But the problem is we don't hear that voice. And also Krishna is so gentle. It's amazing how Krishna is gentle. He observes and he gives permission, but as Prabhupada writes, in cooperation with the individual soul. That means he's taking into consideration what we want. I don't know what's the problem.
It's not turned on.
Oh, it's on. Oh. Yeah, I thought it was a chew on this or something with an effect. Anyway. Very decorative.
Looks nice in pictures.
Yeah, it's like... Once again, when the super soul is not, transmitting the sound, there is no sound. Therefore, it's described that even we have the same thing built in here. Okay? It's the same mechanism. So when that is switched off, you can say whatever you want, nobody will hear one thing. Because there's no sound coming out. And on the other side, when the super soul doesn't permit us to hear, you will not hear one thing. Therefore, just imagine you walk under the super soul, there's no microphones needed. Because the transmission is already done from heart to heart. That's how the yogis communicated. You can find even in Bhagavatam. They knew even, that yogi is coming. And soon enough, he arrived on the scene. This highly empowered yogis, they had completely their own communication. You could say they had really their own internet. It's all stored in Akash in a subtle form, all the body of information. So they knew, he's coming. And they knew they could read the mind, they could read the heart, and they could actually read the super soul. And super soul is the ultimate mediator. Because he's in everybody's heart. So what is the problem of misunderstanding? Krishna wants the same thing. The only problem is that we are individual souls and we want different things. Krishna wants, as is described here, actually basically only one thing, that we return back home, back to him. And then according to our individual bodily packaging, we can act in various ways according to guna and karma. But the facilitation of the super soul is the same for everybody. But they don't do that. Nobody listens to super soul. So in Satya Yuga it was so easy. Yogis were just sitting under the tree meditating, and Krishna was Anumanta and Upadrashta. Everybody lived in harmony with the Super Soul. That's really harmonious society. The ultimate definition of harmony is that you live in harmony with the Super Soul. Well, in Kali Yuga it's exactly opposite. Because everybody wants to do any damn thing he wants to do. So the Super Soul is just neutral. Yes, you want to go to hell like this, I will help you. You want to worship demigods like this, I will increase your faith. You want to believe. Everybody sees what he wants to see. And Krishna is very cooperative. You think Mr. Hitler is a pure devotee, great, worship him and dive with. Yes. The massive fascination of people with stupidity is superhuman. It has to be superhuman because it's inspired by the Super Soul. Yes, yes. You want that, you will get it. As they have the saying, as you make you bad, so you lay down. This is precisely calculated. Therefore, to avoid to be misguided, the position of a spiritual master is absolutely essential. A spiritual guidance is such. Nobody in a Vedic culture moved without reference. Everybody had a reference to something, somebody, all the time. Nobody was like, and today, I will do it my way. No. There was a whole, from the childhood to the old age, there was constant consultants going on. Nobody took his independent action just like that. And this was actually all understood that, of course, culture means it was just done. Because my grandfather did this and I do it like this. But there was, of course, a deeper meaning to it. And the meaning is protection. Because we cannot all work under Super Soul. We don't listen to Super Soul. If he would have a really perception of the Super Soul, he wouldn't have none of the problems we have. Because the Super Soul is not like one Super Soul in one's heart is dictating something else, this other Super Soul in somebody else's heart. They have an argument. Krishna divided himself and now his portions are arguing, I think we should do more. No way, it's the same Krishna. So there is no problem on the level of the Super Soul. The problem comes from us, the individual living entities, who don't hear that voice or even oppose that voice. And Seva spiritual master and Seva spiritual guidance is to be there all the time. To coordinate things in a way where we don't get butchered by this world of dualities. There's always something. Somebody, you say something, we say something else. And you do something, somebody is opposing. It's all the time like this, all the time. One gets upset sometimes, no, it's always like that. You can go anywhere, from university up to politicians, they debate all the time. All the time, somebody's always, in principle. Prabhupada said even there is, Muni, and then Shtritati Muni. Yeah. And Muni means essentially a thinker. He is very much relying on the power of his mind and his intelligence. And that, without being coordinated by the Super Soul, will put him immediately in an argument position. And he will be immediately arguing with another Muni. So at least in the Vedic times, this was done, there was a rules for that. All argument has to be done on the level of Vedic scripture. Not I think, I believe in my opinion. Prabhupada said when you start like this, you can immediately close it down. Or what to speak, I feel. You don't find in the Bhagavatam that, that Maharaj Parikshit goes, yeah, it's very nice what you said, but I feel, in my opinion, in my belief. The whole discussion will be finished. Prabhupada said, whoever started like this in the Vedic culture was immediately disqualified from the philosophical discussion. Everything had to be conducted straight on the level of the Shastra. And if somebody couldn't quote anymore, the other one actually quoted him out and proved him not to have sufficient knowledge. On the spot, the defeated one became disciple of the one who actually defeated him, publicly. Immediately surrendered to him. Actually, that was actually the real basic principle of parampara. one knows more as the other, in a true realized sense. So, surrender. That's all. Not that, that constant argument, keeping on going, and at the end they tell you, well, it's just your opinion. I don't believe that. Well, I don't feel good about it, like you say. You don't give me a good feeling, no. I don't feel simply good about it. Well, if you listen to only those who give you a good feeling, that's the best way to get cheated. Because it's exactly what cheaters do. They come in and they go, oh, I will make you feel very good. Buy this, worship me, I feel very good. Me God, you God. You don't know you are God? I can teach you how to become God. It's nice to be God. I tell you, I'm happy, I'm God every day. You think, wow. It's only $200, a seminar on how to become God. Great. In the 60s was full of this kind of things. Prabhupada couldn't believe it. How stupid these Western people are. Actually he started to preach in such a place, in this yoga studio for Mr. Mishra. It was all about transcendental happiness and unity. $200, thank you very much. There was all these fat American ladies sitting there, practicing yoga. And they were so gone that they couldn't even oppose to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was very diplomatic. He said, one comes in like a needle and comes like a plow. So he had no other ground to operate on as that. So actually he was preaching by cooking. Not really much philosophical argumentation, there was nothing to argue. Right away with the chief of the yoga school, he praised Prabhupada. His cooking is so fantastic, he saved my life. So Prabhupada was going, yes, very important, yeah, preach prasadam. That's all. And you see there's a picture of Prabhupada sitting in the yoga studio with others taking prasadam, and Prabhupada just humbly sits there in the corner, takes prasadam, There's nothing to say. Because when you are surrounded by so much stupidity, there is nothing to say. Luckily Prabhupada was not a Czech, because Czechs cannot do like this. They just have to make some really, they think this is so bizarre, I have to bring it to another dimension. And Prabhupada did occasionally manifest a really ghastly sense of humor when it came to stupidity. A really immense Prabhupada was really sarcastical, but not very often. Because it doesn't do anything for preaching people. To be sarcastical, people just feel emotionally affected. Like, even dogs are like this. You laugh about the dog, he gets depressed. I had a particular experience. You just can laugh about the dog, and he gets the emotional vibration. He's laughing about me. But what can I do? I'm a dog, So, but I cannot do anything else. Yeah. I have an experience of a dog messing himself so up that and then he wants to enter the house. I don't want to give seminar on dogs, it's ridiculous, but dogs like to roll around in cow dung. I don't know why they do that. So they just roll in cow dung and then they want to come to you, and enter your house. They think this is quite nice. And when they come to the door, and they are addressed like, what are you doing here? What have you done? You stink. They get shocked. Yeah, actually, they think I stink. That's very bad. So they turn around and go away. Okay. Sorry. Still they cannot stop this kind of behavior because it's a dog. So when you preach to people like this, there is no need to be more sarcastical because they just cannot change this. They're just rolling stool, They just, they think, oh, what do you mean stool? Well, you just rolled in it. Oh, but I do it every day. Yeah, that doesn't change the fact that you stink. Oh, okay. And then from a human being it's expected that he will investigate. How can I change my degraded way of behavior? That's human being. Dog cannot change, really. You can punish dog, you can restrict him, but he will be still a dog and acting that way. A human being is supposed to actually improve his type of behavior. And that's possible by humble inquiry and surrender to the spiritual guidance. then any kind of improvement is possible. Prabhupada proved it. Because the only reason this movement came into existence and the only reason the lives of his disciples changed was that they surrendered unto him. There's no other reasons. Nobody brought some credits on his own. Like even Prabhupada definitely pointed out that if everybody continues on a path of devotional service, he must have done some devotional service in the past. But that brought him to Krishna consciousness. How he may advance further, that depends entirely on the mercy of the spiritual master. So this is always a reference for a disciple. Okay, what did he say? How did he say that? There's no limits to investigate into the ways spiritual master is acting. Because acting, that's the point, he's acting. It's not just that he is speaking. It's not just that he says something. That you can say too. We are not just body. Anybody can say that. But it's the purity of the sound. It's the, it's the way he responds in individual situations. Therefore, there's no limits we can study how Prabhupada preached. There's always an exciting moments where Prabhupada revealed another dimension of Krishna consciousness, sometimes in situations which were completely unpredictable. He was always excited. Sometimes Prabhupada got unpredictably heavy. And sometimes he got unpredictably merciful and very tolerant actually. Because Prabhupada had as the Super Soul, the external manifestation of the Super Soul. That's the position of the spiritual master. So he had a view upon the intentions and desires of that individual soul. So with some people suddenly he was very averse even to communicate. And he was very heavy. And some people he was, even they are saying completely stupid things. Probably going, but like this, very tolerant. Because he knew that fool is just repeating what he heard. He has no intention really to follow it. Sometimes people just say things because they heard something and they want to say something. They go, wow. They go, yeah. Yes. But Krishna is saying like this. Oh, that's interesting. So you divert the attention of the conditioned soul to some real spiritual subject. Whereby there are other people who actually can even quote the Vedas, and they have a very sinister and very heinous motivation behind the whole thing, to become God. And then that motivation, that desire, that's how offenses are defined. There are different levels of offenses by words, physical offense, in the mind, which fortunately in Kali Yuga doesn't count. Just imagine that would count. What you think, and we would be burned to ashes in a few minutes. What we think, what can come up in the mind. So this is fortunately in Kali Yuga not so relevant. In other ages, like Satya Yuga, where the meditation in the mind was very important, that was a severe thing. You couldn't even think like this. No. But in Kali Yuga, if you would go after that, what people think, it's terrifying sometimes, yeah. Even devotees, they get sometimes the glimpses and the power to see other people's mind. Well, it's usually not very funny what you find there. What people can think. They don't even know what they think. They just think. The mind is just a rolling monster, completely out of control, that mechanism. Just following the central input. Animals are more controlled because they cannot think so much. They think only they follow